Well, greetings, everyone. My name is David McLeod. I am your life mastery coach, and I want to welcome you to another amazing episode of Magnificence in Motion. Today, I'm joined by my friend and my colleague, Carol Pilkington, who is a spiritual and metaphysical teacher, a transpersonal astrologer, and a best-selling author. And today, we're going to discuss the art of reclaiming clarity amid the fog of everyday assumptions. We're going to illuminate how our minds spin stories from scraps of reality, turning minor moments into major misunderstandings. And we're going to offer some practical tools to cut through the noise, whether it's a heated exchange at work or a nagging inner dialogue that keeps you up at night. We reveal why stepping back from snap judgments is like flipping on the lights in a cluttered room. Everything makes sense, and you empower yourself to move with confidence. So thank you so much, Carol, for joining me today. I'm delighted to have you here. We always have amazing conversations. I can't remember. I think we've done different programs together at least a dozen times now, I would think. Mm-hmm. And so it's my pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Would you do, now I'm going to do something that I've never done before. Normally I go through the introductory process and I give, I talk about you a little bit in third person, but today I'm going to I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, tell us who you are, where you are, what you do, and why.
Oh, wow. That's a big ask. All right. So to keep it short and sweet, I'm here in California, in the Los Angeles area. And I would say I've been trying to succinctly put what I am attempting to achieve with clients. And it all boils down to presence. And there are a million different components to that. And there are so many things that I could talk about that get in our way of being present. And one of the topic that we're talking about is one of those obstacles. Our interpretations, perceptions, assumptions, and so on and so forth. And all the ruminations that go along with that keep us out of present time. Mm-hmm. So I guide and work with people to be more present to the life that they're living right here, right now, with clarity and joy and meaning, true meaning, not our assumed living of that and all the things that we carry our history into the present. So it's really about putting the history where it belongs and keeping it there. We need the history, but we could use it as a reference rather than from where we live all the time, every single day. Does that make sense?
It does.
And
I have a sneeze that's just threatening to come on, so I'm going to bounce in and out of mute here. I'm trying to. I don't want to sneeze while I'm recording, but anyway, presence. That's a big deal. That's a major component of my work as well. And so I'm going to ask you, why is presence so important to you? Why is this something that you like to help people discover for themselves? Why is it so important?
It's important to me, and the reason why that's so is that I think better. I see things around me much clearer than if I see it through a foggy lens of assumptions, perceptions, stories that I tell myself about an event. And the decisions that I can make from presence are so much crisper and clearer. Not only that, but presence gives us the ability to create. When we're in presence, in present time, it's pure creation. There is no past gnawing at us. There is no anxiety of the future pulling us, where we don't need to go yet, where we can't know where we're going, right? We're simply here and now. And a lot of people, when they first experience it, it's a big jolt, and it can be scary because the mind all of a sudden shuts off. And people think that they need the chatter in their life every day. And they don't.
Oh, of course. No, we don't. I'm sure by now, pretty much everybody must have heard of Eckhart Tolle, who's probably most famous for his book, The Power of Now, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, that book was published right around 2000. So it's been around for quite a long time now. And it was, in my opinion, I mean, it was a great book. I really loved it. And he talked about how everything is actually perfect in the now. And you've been saying the same thing, perhaps with slightly different words, but basically when you're in the now, you don't have to worry about anything. There's like you say, there's no past that's dragging you, into story that you don't need to know about. And you don't need to worry about what's happening in the future because it's not here yet. But the problem is, as you say, we have minds for sure. And the mind is constantly doing what it does. It's very much a machine, I guess. And I like to call it a projection machine. It's certainly a meaning-making machine, as we're going to be talking about today. And what's really interesting to me when I do my meditation, and I can get into that state of presence, that is really actually quite a beautiful, blissful place. The idea of meaning kind of goes out the window. And I think this is because of what you said, where the mind tends to quiet down. It doesn't seem to have as much impact, But what I find fascinating is that even when you're doing something, if you're not actively practicing being present, then what happens is the slightest thing you do, even something as simple as just looking at clouds, can be fraught with all kinds of mental gymnastics. You're sitting there, you're looking at clouds, and then before you know it, you start to see a face or a flower or a bunny rabbit or some damn thing in the clouds. And so your mind starts talking stories about, oh, look what that bunny rabbit's doing. It's chasing them. And before you know it, you're not looking at clouds anymore. And that's the whole thing that we're about to be talking about today. It's trying to let the story go so you can see what is in front of you for what it is and not for what you think it is.
Mm-hmm.
That I think is, in a nutshell, is what we mean when we talk about clarity, antidote to assumptions.
Absolutely. I love that analogy. I use something similar when we're admiring a painting, some kind of art, or the trees, like you said, the sky, the sunset. We begin to put words to it. Right. And the moment we put words to anything, it becomes an interpretation, becomes a filter through which we see that. We no longer see that. We just see the words and the feelings
Right.
that it brings up and the meaning that we apply to it and blah, 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 right?
Right. Yeah, it's a fascinating process, And one of the things that I have learned and what I teach my clients is meditation is wonderful for bringing yourself back into the present moment. But don't for a moment imagine, and here's where more judgment's coming in, that you have to have a quiet mind.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is not to say to the mind, shut up, go away, leave me alone. The idea is to be present enough that you can recognize that the mind is doing something. That's the secret of meditation. When you recognize it, you can say, oh, look at that. An interesting interpretation just popped into my head. Thank you for that. And let it go. Until you get to that awareness stage, you're going to be caught in the interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
That's the beauty of presence. And I can't tell you how much liberation I have experienced by doing more and more meditation. I wish I had started this when I was 5 years old.
Right? I know.
Unfortunately, I wasn't
Who
brought up
knew?
that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's when we begin to, yeah, I think there has been such a misnomer about meditation, and I call it observation. We can observe in every single moment of our life, whether we're having
Right.
a conversation with someone in the moment, we can be observing. And it is a huge muscle to flex and strengthen the
Right.
power of observation. And
Yeah.
when we can do that, all of those immediate filters that we see the world through, see ourselves through, begin to dissipate and lose their stranglehold on us. We can
Right.
actually, like you were saying, begin to see things as they are and have that pause to be able to respond to something with the clarity and the truth of what is, rather than the story that we create around it.
Right. Well, and it's interesting. Quantum physicists have come to the conclusion that even observing something has an impact on the surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
And this has led me to a conclusion that conclusion, right? My mind made up this conclusion, this story. How can there even exist any kind of reality without a conscious presence to experience it or observe it? The idea of, I don't know, what are we calling it these days? Objective reality. I think that's a fantasy,
Totally.
I think it requires consciousness to be present within the context of whatever reality is in order to experience it and observe it. And as you say, observing, witnessing, whatever terminology you like to use, if you can observe without interjecting story, although now you can observe your story, that's just another level of observation, right?
Yeah.
It becomes really, really fascinating. And this is one of the things I love to do. How long can I observe something without putting a story on it? And I have to tell you, I admit that it's not very long.
Yeah.
It's probably a matter of, I would say, maybe 10 seconds longest before the story starts coming in, and I have to pause, take a breath, and just say thank you for the story, and just renew my desire to observe. It's challenging.
Yeah. I love that you brought this up, because I want people to be clear out there that we're not talking about stopping our talking or interpreting or evaluating. We're not talking about no longer using words. We live in a world of language, but it's learning to understand the mechanisms of the language. It's learning to understand and take that pause, that the word is not the thing itself. It's not the event.
Right. Yeah. It's like, somebody famously said, the map is not the terrain. Well, that's exactly
Alfred
right. The map is
Korzybski,
simply a guidepost, a way of helping us find our way around the terrain. The same thing is true of words.
Yes.
The word is not the thing.
Well, that was exactly what he meant. Alfred Korzybski coined the term, the map is not the territory.
Right.
And basically he was saying, when you can pause and see or observe without putting a word or label to it, it's not that you don't see what you see, but we are so automatic in putting labels and words to something. It's like a native being on the beach, and they see what we would call a ship out on the horizon. They don't have the word for that. They just see something out there. But when we're standing on the same beach or the same surface, and we see something out there on the horizon, we put a word to it immediately and call it a ship or call it ... When we can pause, just create that pause and point to it and then say ship, then we're creating that nuance where we're not automatically labeling something. And it really can make a difference in the way we see the world and the way we receive information from one another.
Right. Yeah, our minds are fascinating tools. Our brains and our ego minds and our ability to do pattern matching and all this kind of stuff. It really is fascinating to me how this all works. I mean, one of the things that I found fascinating was I used to read a lot of Stephen King books back when he was, when he was just getting started. And one of the things I noticed about his writing style was that he would deliberately leave out details. He's very, very aware of our ability to fill in the blanks.
Mm-hmm.
And so the beauty of that approach in writing is you read a chapter of his book and I read the same chapter and we see our own versions of the same thing. We might get the same basic storyline, but we're going to put in details that are relevant to us to fill in those blanks. And that is an amazing aspect of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
We can recognize shapes with even the sparsest amount of information, even if the shape isn't even there.
Yeah, exactly. One of the other things that Alfred Korzybski talked about was levels of abstraction. So, for instance, we have a farm. That's a high level of abstraction. On that farm, it could be cows, could be chickens.
Old MacDonald's song is coming to my mind.
Yeah, right? What kind of cows? Are they Jersey cows? Are they other kind of cows?
Right.
So there we have a high level of abstraction, and then we go down to the specificity of the abstraction of that farm.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where language can really trip us up. When we're in conversation with people, we assume that we know exactly, or we assume that people know exactly what we're saying and what we're meaning.
Right. Yep. That's right.
That's
another one of these key words, right? Assumptions. We're assuming, like when you and I have a conversation and I make a statement, I'm assuming that you understand the meanings of those words the same way I do.
Correct.
And that assumption, it may be valid in some cases, especially if you're working with someone who's in a similar industry, a similar field, whatever that might be. Obviously, if two therapists are talking about a certain kind of, disorder, they both have the same language. But if you start taking that therapist and talking to an engineer about that same disorder, okay, all bets are off. You can no longer assume that both people know the same language.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's a fascinating thing. And of course, one of the other things that we do we haven't mentioned this word yet, but we talked about interpretations, conclusions, evaluations, and a few other terms that you mentioned. But another one is judgment. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason is I think people have a negative vibe around the word judgment. We assume that all judgments are bad. And of course, that's not true. Some judgments are very positive. Yeah. A judgment, that's exactly what it is. A judgment and interpretation are the same thing. Usually, though, a judgment implies that I have to take some kind of action, where an interpretation is just, okay, that's interesting kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But a judgment implies that I have to take some kind of action. That's the only way I would differentiate the two, right? And, we can also, we can merge the word belief into that too. Because if you already have a certain belief system, then you're more likely to lean in a particular direction about some process of interpretation. This is just natural human nature. I mean, we all do it. And that's another thing that, this presence can help us deal with.
Yes. Presence rules out and eliminates the misinterpretation, because when we're present, we have the wherewithal to ask questions of clarification and not assume what another person means or assume that another person knows what we mean.
Mhm.
There's clarity of mind in the now to be as clear as possible and succinct as possible. Even ask, are you understanding what I'm saying? And can you share with me your experience of what I'm saying? This way you get verification of what they are receiving and interpreting from their perceptions of what you're saying.
Yeah, that's powerful. I think that's one of the aspects of nonviolent communication. The idea of, well, first of all, trying to choose words and phrases that don't imply violence within them, but also giving the other person the opportunity to reflect back what is being said in his or her own words, rather than just simply assuming, again, there's that word again, that the understanding is there and that they're receiving what you're delivering.
Yeah, exactly. It's so important to have that presence of mind to be able to have that kind of clear and open communication. It will resolve all conflict if we could just do that one thing.
Mm-hmm.
We might
Yeah.
not like what another person is saying,
Right.
but that's not
Or
my
how they're
business.
saying it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But at least we're both clear on what is being said.
Right. Right. Yeah. And it's funny how if we believe that we are being judged by somebody else, how we almost instantly go into defensive mode, begin protecting ourselves, and begin and so for some of us, I know I'm one of those people, my defense is quite offensive, if you know what I mean. My defense is to point back before you get a chance to hurt me anymore. That's how it works for me. It has for years. And in fact, in spite of all the work I've done, sometimes it still happens. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. I've been doing a lot of work for a lot of years. And every once in a while, I catch myself in an old pattern. I say, oh, my God. So there I go again.
But the key is that you've caught it.
Right. And I was going to just say, the thing is, when you catch it, you get better at catching it so that sooner or later, you're going to reach a point where you catch it before it happens.
Yeah.
And that is when I think you have reached a certain level of maturity and healthiness, that life is just going to start being a lot better. One of the things that I learned years ago, there's nothing wrong with having judgments. I've already said that. And I think it's okay even to be expressing judgments to another person, just as long as you own them completely. Instead of saying, like you gave that one example in your write-up, you disrespected me. Well, that's a judgment, clear and simple. It may have been even true that you interrupted me, but even that is also a judgment. Let's get down. What's the difference? Okay, how do I eliminate the judgment out of this altogether? Well, one way I could do it is I could say, Carol, I noticed when we were speaking, somehow we ended up, so we were speaking at the same time. I judged that you were interrupting me. I had that judgment in my head. And I made up all this story that you don't care about me, that you disrespect me, blah, blah, blah. Now what I'm doing is I'm owning my own process. I'm using I statements. I'm telling you what happened. And now I can go further and I could say, I realize now that this is all an old story. I used to get interrupted by my mom all the time. And so now what I'm doing is I'm projecting my mother onto you. Now, if I can get that far, How much healing happens in that moment when I can say, oh my God, I'm seeing my mom on you. I want to withdraw that projection. I want to take my mother away from you because I know you're not my mother. And I'm not asking you to change anything. I just simply wanted to share this with you. That's all. I mean, how many people would actually do that? How many
Right.
people actually have those kinds of conversations?
I know.
Pretty
It's
few.
very rare.
Yeah.
I would say less than 1%.
Yeah, I wouldn't even want to go that high, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It's
it
so
sure would make a
huge.
difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we own our judgments, just say, oh, I'm having a judgment. And I'm having a judgment about Carol. Should I tell her about it? You know? Well, that's up to you. I guess you have to decide. I mean, how important is it? Has Carol been hurt by anything that you've done as a result of this judgment? Have you snapped at her? Have you done anything else that might cause her some pain? If so, you might want to go and correct that situation. This is powerful stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it requires, as you say, it requires awareness, it requires presence, and it requires a level of maturity and integrity that a lot of people aren't willing to embrace.
That's so true. And they're not even aware of it. When people's lives start to really start to unravel and they find themselves in the same situation, maybe the circumstances are different, but they find themselves in the same circumstances over and over and over again. And the moment they begin to question what is going on here, I know this happened for me when I realized that I was the common denominator in all these scenarios. So,
Yeah.
what does
Isn't that
tell
always
me?
the case? Every situation that I find myself in, wait, I'm in it.
Yes. Everybody else can go away, but I'm still standing.
Yeah.
And so when I recognized that, I began to take it a little bit further and observe and take a look at what I was deriving and what I was interpreting about all of these different situations. There was a point at which I would maybe write something and I would ask my teacher to take a look at it, and he would come back with some critiques about it, and I would be crushed. Why would I be crushed? Was I trying to impress him? Was I wanting to say this is great and go for it, put it out there? Was he judging me? No. But my interpretation was, I'm not good enough. It's not good enough. It was an all or nothing situation for me. I can't do this because it's not good enough. I'm not up to the standards. But then I began to recognize that don't ask if you don't want to receive the feedback. Number one.
Right.
Number two is that he had more experience than I did. And as it turns out, the things that he said about the article that I was creating, if I really step back and look at it and reread it again, I could see all the gaps. I could see that there was no clear through line from start to finish, and that I needed to fill those in and have it clear and come from the mind of the reader versus just putting a whole bunch of ideas together in this document and hoping that people will understand what the heck I'm saying.
Right.
And so I began to calm myself and look for the feedback in a true and authentic way, rather than looking for praise and looking for non-judgmentalness, because he wasn't judging me. He was judging what I presented to him. So it wasn't anything personal. That's another thing. And I'm really big on is not taking things personally, because it's not personal.
Well, here's another thing that might resonate for you, and I hope it does. I hope you want to share it. But what I believe about feedback is always about the person who's delivering it. It's not about the person receiving it.
Mm-hmm.
How could it be any other way? I don't know 100% what's going on in your heart or your mind or your soul. All I can tell you is this is how it landed on me. This is how I feel about it. These are my suggestions for how you could improve it. But if you are going to abide by those suggestions, then basically first, if you just do it because I said so, then all you're doing is trying to please me. But if you're doing it because you resonate with the suggestions, it's because I have found a connection to you somehow, and you are now owning it. So the beauty of feedback is you can ask for feedback. However, I recommend ask for exactly what kind of feedback you want. And then when you get it, say, thank you so much. Mm-hmm. That's all you need to ever say. And you don't have to use any of it. You may decide the feedback helped you to see something that you couldn't see before, and you're going to find your own way to fix it. Or you may decide, I really like this idea, I'm going to bring that in. That's the beauty of feedback. And this is why it's so important to say thank you, even if you don't use a single piece of it.
That's right. And that's what we do in masterminds, right? We go around and we ask for feedback. Take it or leave it. If it resonates with you, great. If it doesn't, let it go. It's not personal.
Right.
But in this instance with my teacher, he knew me. He knows me inside and out, and all that I've learned and experienced. And I also had to ask the question, why am I asking for feedback? What do I want to get from the feedback? And for me, it was approval and acceptance and praise and all that stuff.
Right.
Because if I really wanted the feedback, an honest feedback about the strength of the article, I wouldn't have been offended by it. I wouldn't have been crushed by it. I would have said, got it. I'll go back and look at it. Thank you. And I'll make ... changes, or I won't. Right?
Right. Yeah.
But I will not have had the kind of reaction that I had.
Right. You highlighted something really, really important here. First of all, you had the clarity and the courage to say, yeah, I was looking for approval. I was looking for his pat on the back. I was looking for atta girl, how to go kind of thing. That's what I was looking for. Now you have a chance with that information to go a little deeper and say, okay, why was I looking for that from him? Why am I not able to give that to myself? What is it that keeps me from approving of myself, of patting myself on the back? Do you see how powerful that little reflection is?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not judgment. I mean, I personally try to avoid questions like why, because it often puts me in a state of,
it's a spiral, right?
Yeah, because it's just a justification, really. So if you can ask a slightly different question, like, how does it serve me to ask someone else for approval? Or how am I growing by expecting someone else to give me that pat on the back? Would I be able to grow more if I learn to give myself a pat on the back? You see, if you ask questions that way, there's less judgment in them and more opportunity for openness and growth.
Absolutely. We can observe our own behavior.
Yep.
sometimes the way that I ask a question is, what is the nature of my need for approval?
That's a good one. I love that. What is the nature of my need for approval? I love that. Yeah, that's a great question.
And so with that, I go deeper and deeper and deeper, and the answers bubble up.
Of course.
They always
Yeah,
do when we observe.
Right.
Observing is so key.
Yeah, well, that's right. And asking questions is important too, but you have to be willing to not only ask the right question, but to be ready for the answer.
Absolutely. Because
the universe will provide. In fact, the universe is providing all the time, even before you ask the question. This has been proven over and over and over again. So part of the process of becoming present is opening up to what the universe is trying to tell me. What is it that the universe has for me right now that I have been unable or unwilling to hear up until now?
Yeah, exactly. So important to pay attention. Don't ask if you don't want the answer.
Yeah, well, even then, sometimes you're going to get the answer whether you ask or not.
That's right.
Because the universe knows the truth of who you really are. And the universe knows why you're here. So the universe will keep doing things to get you pointed in the right direction, even if sometimes it has to slap you upside the head with a 2x4.
So true. You'll either get the lesson or you won't.
That's right. Well, in my case, I've noticed that sometimes the lesson is there and I see it and I ignore it. Or sometimes the lesson is there and I miss it. But what I've also noticed is that sometimes the intensity of the lesson starts to increase the longer I take to pay attention.
It always does. And that's the nature of crisis. We often, most of the time, we don't do anything about anything unless it becomes a crisis.
Right.
Unless it really slaps us down. And, it's just like in AA or any of these other programs, where is our rock bottom? Where we reach a point where this can no longer sustain me.
Right. It reminds me of the, I think it was Anais Nin who made a poem with the phrase something like, and the time came where the pain to stay closed in a bud was too strong or something like that, and it had to blossom. That's just such a beautiful, beautiful statement. Yeah. And I just mangled it. My apologies to Anais Nin, but it's a beautiful statement. And it kind of encompasses what you were saying. Your rock bottom might be different than my rock bottom. So don't ever compare yourself to somebody else. You will do what it takes to improve your life when the level of discomfort or pain, whatever you want to call it, reaches that critical threshold. And that threshold is different for everybody. So, yeah, Don't question, don't compare, don't judge, just simply observe your own life, observe the choices you are making. Ask yourself, is this serving me? And if so, great. If not, then what new choice are you going to make?
Exactly. We make it sound so simple, don't we? But it's not. Life is very
simple. I mean, it's simple.
It's
just not
but
easy.
It's not easy.
Yeah. and the problem is, it's not even that it isn't easy. It's that we have ego minds that are very, very powerful. And I don't know about you, Carol, but my ego mind is constantly telling me, if you do this, that bad thing over there is going to happen. I constantly have to question my ego mind and say, thank you so much for taking care of me. Thank you so much for protecting me and keeping me safe. I got this covered. And, there's no point in trying to shut up my ego mind. Yes, it ain't going away.
Yeah, it's another thing about that observation. When you see it, there's a shift that happens. That's what the double slit experiment was all about that we were referring to earlier.
Right.
Once something observed, it changes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's the velocity with which we see that really changes the whole game.
Right. Yeah, that's true. This whole notion of quantum mechanics, quantum physics, and everything, how everything is all tied together. There's no such thing as separation. That's a complete illusion, And it's also the truth that there's no such thing as nothing. Nothing is also an illusion that cannot exist. It's a simple construct of the mind.
Right.
All there is all that is. And we're all part of it.
Yes, we are.
Yeah. We're getting into some deep philosophical stuff here. Not exactly where I thought we were going to go with this, but I'm fascinated by the conversation, as always. So
one of the... Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, how do we actually get to that place of clarity? Clarity is one of those terminologies that's going to have different meanings for different people. So how would you define it, first of all? And if so, how? And secondly, how would you help people to start beginning a practice of maintaining or growing and maintaining clarity?
A really excellent question. The first thing we have to do, I think, is ask a question. Everything begins with a question. And when we learn to ask the questions that will get us, forward down the road, it becomes easier and easier. It's like when I was going through my journey, I hit a moment of incredible dejection. And I questioned everything that I had experienced, everything that I had learned. And I called it BS. And I began to ask, what is this all for? What is the purpose of doing this work? What is the purpose of even being here? I was in such agony. And the more I questioned and the answers arose, I kept asking more and more questions, and I became clearer and clearer. I got back to being present to the work that I was doing and who I really am, which is love. That's my experience. Right. But I questioned myself out of the dejection. We have to be able to be willing to go down a rabbit hole and not be afraid of the rabbit hole, not be afraid of the abyss that we might find ourselves in, because there's always a way out. And when we can trust that there's always a way out and a way through, then we can do anything. It's the fear of the unknown that keeps us often from asking a simple question that helps us to clarify things. Afraid that we're not going to get the answer.
Right.
But when we have the courage, when we muster up the courage to ask one question, it leads to another and another and another. And that will give us the clarity that we need. So it's the courage to ask and the courage to not be afraid of what we don't know or what we might find.
Yeah. So what you just described is, I think, a beautiful example of what it's like to go through this a transition from a mental state, a ego mind state, to a spiritual state. And it does involve lots of questions, because usually if you're in any kind of pain at all, it's because your ego mind's in charge. That's my belief. Because when you're truly present in your soul, there is no pain. There is only love. There is no pain. There's no fear. There's nothing. And you mentioned something about the fear of the unknown. Yeah, the ego mind certainly is afraid of the unknown. Absolutely true. But when you remember that everything is connected, that we are all one, then therefore there is nothing that is unknown. There is nothing for which that we should be afraid of. Absolutely nothing. Even the idea of aloneness is not possible in the context of infinite consciousness. It's not possible. So I'm never going to be alone. I'm never going to not know something. And if for some reason I have this idea that there's something I need to know that I don't think I know right now, as you say, all I got to do is ask the question. Here's one thing that I like to ask for myself is, what is the universe calling forth from me right now? What am I being drawn to do? I'm pretty clear on my life purpose now. That it took me several years to figure that out, but I got it. I'm here with that. So what can I do now to blossom more into my purpose, into the truth of who I really am, and bring forth more goodness for other people in this world? How do I do that? How do I do that? And just wait. Before you know it, the universe will give you an answer. You never know how it's going to arrive, but it'll come. It'll come. It may be right now. It may be a day from now. It may be a week from now. It might be in a conversation you overhear between two people down the street. It might be some barista giving you coffee and happens to make an off-the-cuff comment about something. Or, you might hear it in a song. You never know where you're going to get some words are just going to come, and all of a sudden it's going to click. And you might not even realize that that's where it clicked. But the fact of the matter is the universe will respond, and it might be right in your face, and it might be somewhere off the side. But just stay alert.
Absolutely. It's so true. We live in a culture where we want immediate answers to everything. And sometimes asking a question is a process of ask and wait. The answer is in the question. If there wasn't an answer, we wouldn't be asking the question.
That's great. Yeah, that's true. That's certainly been true in my life. I mean, why am I asking this particular question? Clearly, there's an answer built right into it. There's another thing that I've shared with people all the time, and you kind of reminded me of this. You said there's always a way out. And I phrase it a little differently, but I agree with that sentiment exactly. I tell people, I say, okay, here you are here today. I don't know how old you are, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years old. I don't care. It doesn't matter. But here you are today, right here, right now. Now, if you imagine the trajectory of your life, maybe it was a straight line for you, but maybe it kind of jigged and jagged and did all kinds of weird stuff. Part ways along that journey, you bumped into some obstacles. I guarantee it. There's no way you got here without bumping into some obstacles. How many obstacles in your life? 1, 10, 100, 1,000,000? Who knows? It doesn't matter. But guess what? Here you are today. So you made it through every single one of them. You got over it, around it, through it, under it, whatever. But you have a 100% success rate. Man, when I say that, people just, holy shit, you're right.
Yeah.
So what makes you think this obstacle is any different? You just haven't figured out the way through it or over it or around it yet. It'll happen. Just give it time and trust yourself, because you've already proven you can do it.
Exactly. We are very creative beings.
That's right.
And we can do anything that we set our path to do, set our feet on the path to do.
Right. Right. And that's part of this whole process of clarity, isn't it? I like to remind people that there's nothing more important than knowing, embracing, expressing, and experiencing the deepest truth of who you really are. So, in my opinion, in my judgment, the first thing that you should get clear about is who you really are. And everything else kind of emanates out from that. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. Totally agree with that. And it's a process. People have to unravel all the things that we've been talking about previously. The language that we use on ourselves and how we interpret all of that. It all goes back to even what we were talking about before. And when we can unravel the language that we have been used by and that we have used on ourselves, we can become much more present to the now and true to ourselves. We can be our authentic selves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and who you really are is a far, far deeper truth than any story you might have about yourself right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you mentioned earlier, it's important. We all have a story. I think you used the word history, but we all have a history. We all have a story. And that's great. You know, a story kind of describes the process for getting to a certain point, right? But you are not your story. It's the important, really, really important to understand that. You're not your story. And you're not even the product of your story. You're just, that story probably changes. I've been writing my story now for quite a few years. I participated in many books. I've shared bits and pieces of my story. And every time I do a new book, a new piece comes out. So my story is constantly changing too.
Yeah.
Do you find that happening for you?
Absolutely. I mean, as we evolve, the story changes. And there's a story that we create every single day.
Right.
It's just the nature of language. It's just the nature of being human. We're not trying to do away with the stories, but just put them in the proper perspective and proper understanding as it relates to who we really are. And being able to see others more clearly and the world around us more clearly.
Right. One thing, well, you know this, but maybe my audience doesn't. I'm working on a book right now called The Tree of Life Mastery, which is my view of all of the tools that people need in order to live an absolutely amazing life. And one of my chapters is about identity. And Carol has contributed what I'm calling a guest expert vignette to that chapter. And so it's very, very important. Identity is like the most important piece, but it's not it's not the whole book about identity. It's about life mastery, where identity is a big component of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited about this book. By the way, it's really taking nice shape. It's going to be a pretty awesome book. So I'm looking forward to when it comes out. But so what else can we say about this whole idea of becoming aware of assumptions, stories, filters, interpretations, whatever, and dismantling them, or not necessarily dismantling them, but maybe not giving them quite so much power in our lives?
I think one of the key things is asking the question, what do I actually know? Versus what it separates the reality from the interpretation. Like, what do I know? I know that, for instance, so here's an analogy for you. I've been to a lot of conferences in my life. You've been to a lot of conferences in your life. We see somebody come into the room that we haven't seen in a long time, and they're coming forward towards us, but then they walk right past us, not even seeing us. My mind or somebody's mind might go to, they just ignored me. They just walked right past me and didn't see me. The true thing is, in that whole scenario, is they did not see me. But I added all this big story around it that made me feel small. I made myself feel small, that I'm invisible, that they didn't see me, they didn't acknowledge my presence. But instead, they weren't walking to me, they were walking to somebody else that they had seen, and they just walked past me. That is the fact. What do I know? They came in my direction, they walked past me. End of story.
Exactly. That's it right there. Yeah. That person was walking towards me.
Other stuff to it.
Right. We didn't actually make eye contact. I don't remember making eye contact, coming towards me and then walking by. And then what I also know is I made up all this story about it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, barring tripping the person to make them see you, then that's all there is.
Right. Exactly.
I'll go up to them later on and I'll say, hey, you walked right past me. What's the matter with you? So I didn't even see you. I was right there. You practically brushed my arm.
Right.
But, it's not a big deal, but we make it a big deal.
Right.
Based on our history.
Right. Well, that's true. Yeah. If you're particularly sensitive to, to being worried about being judged if people see you, then you may have a tendency to kind of shrink and make yourself smaller, which then does in fact make it harder for people to see you. And so when they don't see you, you trigger the story that nobody wants to see me. This is what we do. We do this kind of thing all the time. Now, of course, the antidote to that isn't necessarily to start standing up on a stage somewhere and screaming at the top of your lungs so that people will know you're there. But it is okay to stand up tall, proud, and in the truth of who you really are, and let people see you or not see you as they wish.
Yep.
I mean, it doesn't mean that you still won't have a reaction if someone seems to ignore you or pay no attention to you. It doesn't mean that you won't have that thing come up. But it's just another opportunity for you to grow and heal your own inner wound. That's the beauty of the work that we do here.
Mm-hmm.
There's always another opportunity to heal a wound.
Yep.
As my ex-wife used to say, it's, pardon my language, another fucking opportunity for growth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure is.
Carol, this has been an absolutely fascinating and enlivening conversation. I'm just so grateful that you decided to join me today. Do you have any final words you'd like to share before I close us out?
Yeah. I think it's going to be so important for anybody that's listening out there to, instead of reacting, ask these clarifying questions, pay attention to what's coming up for you, observe the isness of the situation versus the interpretation and begin to make that distinction. This is how I interpreted the situation. This is what actually happened. Fact versus story. And when we begin to make those kinds of distinctions, things can change in the way we automatically, interpret things and judge situations and judge ourselves, judge other people. All that can change when we create that gap between what is and the story we tell about it.
Right. I like that. Beautiful. Creating the gap between the truth and the story. That's a powerful statement. And the better we get at it, the bigger the gap can be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much again, Carol, for being here. I've just loved this conversation as always. I have so much fun when I talk to you. It's just great, and I really hope people who are watching this get the benefit of it as well. I want to remind folks that I have the recording of this and every other episode of my program on my website at yourlifemasterycoach.com, so you can go check them all out over there. And I also like to remind you that I have what I call a life mastery mantra, which I use every day at the end of my meditations to help me just ground myself and to embrace the truth of who I really am. It's 3 simple sentences. You can remember these and practice them yourself. It goes like this. I gratefully forgive the imperfect being I have been in the past. I gratefully accept the magnificent being I am right now. I gratefully welcome the evolved being I am becoming in each new moment. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time on Magnificence in Motion. Bye-bye, Carol.
Bye. Thank you.